Hello everyone, I am Ivy Corvus, also known as Ivy the Occultist, and today we're going to be talking about dark moon magic. I wanted to give lots of inspiration, so I found 7 different rituals that I personally incorporate into my magical practice, and I tried to find a couple things that maybe potentially you haven't heard of elsewhere. We're going to talk about what the dark moon is and what you can use it for. We're going to talk about different types of cord cuttings. We're going to talk about get the fuck out powder. We're going to talk about inner dragon work, so I'm excited. I have a lot of really good topics to discuss with you today, but I first wanted to say thank you so much to my channel members. My channel members are the ones that actually selected this topic for today, and I wanted to give a little shout out to my channel members because you guys are like the nicest people ever, and I just really appreciate you guys. If anyone is interested in becoming a channel member, I'll leave the link down below in the description box, but it comes with a bunch of perks. You get early access to my videos, there are content polls once a month, and then a couple other things that I'm forgetting right now, but link is in the description. We're gonna get a little wicked in this video. Not too much, just the right amount. Let's start by discussing what is the dark moon and what can you use it for in a magical practice. I think it's kind of important to look at the moon phases as a whole so you can see how the dark moon fits into that. So I'd like to actually start with the new moon, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Astronomically speaking, the dark moon and the new moon are technically the same thing, although a lot of spiritual communities like to separate the two because they carry two very different energies. So we're going to get into that. But just starting with a new moon, this is a great time for new opportunities to start with a completely blank slate. It is the time to start writing out what you want to manifest over the next month or the next quarter or whatever. New moons are great for planning, for setting intentions, for getting ready to take action, but not quite taking action yet. It's more of like the planning phase and starting new projects and starting fresh with new inspiration. Then moving into the waxing phase of the moon, this is where the energy starts building up a little bit, and this is where you actually start taking that action towards achieving whatever goals that you set out for yourself on the new moon. I personally love the waxing moon. I think it's amazing for manifesting in general and just doing all kinds of spell work. But then as we move closer to the full moon is like the pinnacle of success. There is so much energy with a full moon. It's almost like a finality, things coming to a close. Everything that you've worked towards over that new moon and waxing moon period is now coming to that conclusion. And it's also a time for psychic abilities. Everyone's senses are heightened during the full moon, so it's a great time for spell work of all kinds, magic manifestation, doing some divination, getting out your tarot cards and scrying, connecting with your spiritual allies. There are so many different things that you can do on a full moon because that energy is heightened. And then we move into the waning phase of the moon, which is where the moonlight is now starting to disintegrate. And this is where things are trickling down and moving back towards that new moon state. And during the waning moon, this is kind of the time to shed things, let go of things, kind of rest, reflect, revise, allow yourself to take a break and not really do anything strenuous. Don't start any new projects. Try your best to just attempt to lay low and rest and recuperate. But a big piece of that carries over to the dark moon is this letting go aspect. You are letting things go from your life. And there's a phrase going around in the community where everyone says, let go of things that no longer serve you. I actually hate that phrase so much because I feel like it's so overused, but I also don't know of a better phrase to say than that because it really is about getting rid of things that no longer serve you. And when we hit this dark moon phase, this is where that waning phase is now completing. It is one final push to let things go, to leave a relationship if you need to leave, to quit a job, to cut ties and move on, or to maybe get rid of a bad habit. This is also a great time to perform baneful magic and protective magic, setting firm boundaries for yourself. It's a time to reflect, go inward, be totally alone, do your shadow work on yourself and really figure out what you want out of life and what is no longer working or what is limiting you from getting you what you want. So it can be a really empowering time to work with. I love working with the dark moon. And so you can kind of see there's a little bit of an energetic difference between the dark moon and the new moon because the dark moon is that final release to really let things go, whereas the new moon is all about a blank slate and starting new projects. And so a lot of people in the spiritual community, like I mentioned previously, like to separate these these two. Some people like to say that the dark moon is the day before a new moon. So even though astronomically the dark moon and the new moon is kind of the exact same thing, some people like to celebrate the dark moon a day before the new moon, and then that way when the new moon comes around, everything has already been released, everything is already gone, you are working with a total complete blank slate. Some people like to work with the dark moon for the 2 or 3 day period where there is no moonlight in the sky, where other people would typically consider that a new moon. And then what they would consider to be the new moon is when you start to see that little sliver of the moon coming back through again. So right when you start to see the moon turn into a crescent, that is what some people would consider the new moon instead, from an energetic standpoint, because you're starting to build that energy back up again. Whatever you decide, it doesn't really matter. For me personally, I like celebrating the dark moon a day before the new moon, and then the actual day of the new moon, I feel really good. I can start my new projects, but again, do whatever's gonna work best for you. And another thing I wanted to add in here when it comes to working with the dark moon is that you also might want to consider what astrological sign the dark moon is in, because that astrological sign can add some additional correspondence for where in your life you can kind of look to direct your focus. So just wanted to throw that in there. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I do think looking at other aspects like the astrological sign and maybe how the moon is facing other planets, if you are a planetary magic magician or if you are a cosmic witch or something like that, you already know this, but there's so much more that goes into it than just the moon phase. So if that's something of interest to you, definitely start looking at the astrological signs as well. So let's dive into some rituals then, because there are so many different things that you can do on a dark moon. The first type of ritual that I want to talk about is cord cuttings, and I want to talk about this one first to get it out of the way, because most people are already aware of cord cuttings. You've probably seen it like all over TikTok if you're on Witch Talk, or all over Reddit threads or Facebook or whatever. But if you are looking to cut ties with a very specific person in your life, a cord cutting ritual can be really helpful. And I'm not really going to demonstrate that because those videos are a dime a dozen. There are so many different content creators that have already made videos on this, so I'm not really going to talk about it too much here. All I will say is that you basically have 2 candles and you want to inscribe your name or your initials, your date of birth, just some identifying factors onto one candle, and then on the other candle you write the other person's name, date of birth, etc. And then what you do is you take a cord, typically like a black cord or a red cord, and you tie the 2 candles together, not necessarily so they're touching each other, but space them a little bit further apart, and then run that cord around both of them and tie it into a knot or a bow or something. And then what you do is you light your candle and you wait for the candles to burn all the way down and burn that cord in between. You can also take a more active approach with this and actually take some ritual scissors and cut the cord between the 2 candles if you want to do it that way. Some people even like to read the wax afterwards to get some sort of insight or do some divination on the situation with that person. But that would just be like a basic cord cutting to get someone out of your life. But for me, I like to do my cord cuttings a little bit different. What I like to do is get an athame, and if you don't have an athame, you can just use a butter knife from your kitchen. It doesn't have to be a fancy knife. This one is made out of selenite, which I find to be, it gives a nice cleansing energetic to the ritual, but I have been dying to get my hands on an iron athame because iron is really great for protection and banishing and setting boundaries. So an iron athame or an iron ritual knife would be a really nice kick to really cut those ties out. But I typically just use my selenite athame for now. It's kind of like a gentle cleansing. And what I will do on a dark moon, and I actually do this monthly, and I found that when I do this monthly, it's helped with my energy levels. I'm someone that really struggles with chronic fatigue syndrome, so this is something that has really helped me to increase my energy. I also hate to say it, but I am an empath, and I know that that word is so overused, but it can be really draining for me to be around people. So I find that I need to energetically cut cords from me constantly. And it's not like I am cutting someone completely out of my life like the first ritual that I described. I feel like I kind of need to explain the philosophy, or my philosophy, when it comes to energetic cords. I personally believe, and this doesn't derive from me, this is something that other people believe as well, but that there are energetic ties between people, and the deeper relationship you have with that person, the thicker and stronger the cord is, for better or for worse. But let's say for example, I have a mailman that came to my house and dropped off a package, and I grabbed the package from him. We now have an energetic cord between us, but it is a very thin cord because I don't know my mailman. It was just a brief energetic exchange that we had in that moment when he was handing me the mail. And so my goal with this ritual cutting is I will run the athame down my body and focus on all of those little cords, the little meaningless cords that I don't need to have attached to me. And this doesn't have to be complicated. Don't overcomplicate it. In fact, try not to overcomplicate it because that means you are too much in your conscious, rational mind and you really just want this to be a relaxing subconscious experience. So I will stand up with my ritual knife. I will slowly run this ritual knife down my body, down my arms. I will work down each leg, front and back, just kind of slowly visualizing all of those dead, decaying cords being cut from my body and released, only leaving the fresh, healthy, vibrant, thick cords that I want still attached to my body. So this does require a little bit of visualization as you go through this process. And then typically what I do is I chant as well. So I chant something along the lines of, I call back all my power. I call back all my power. I call back all my power, as within, so without. And you can chant whatever you want to here, but the important part is to retrieve all your energy from all of the places that it is leaking. And that's what really helps you feel more energetic afterwards. So that's the second type of ritual cord cutting that I would recommend. Once I started doing that, I'm not gonna go back. I do it almost every single dark moon and it has done wonders for me. The second dark moon ritual involves a lot of releasing. This is also something that people are probably familiar with. It is very, very basic and beginner friendly, but this is a great time to sit down and write a letter. Write a letter either to yourself or a letter to someone where you wish you could say all the things that you want to say to them, just things in your conscious mind that you want to release. Burn it in your cauldron or burn it in a fire-safe dish afterwards and allow that to fully release. You can also take bay leaves and you can write specific things that you wish to release. So let's say there's a bad habit or something that you're wanting to get rid of. You can write it on a bay leaf and then burn it as a symbol to release that from your life. This is also a great time for shadow work and just journaling in general. So I definitely recommend doing your inner work now. Do some inner child work, get some therapy going because it's good for you. Everybody needs therapy. Write that shit down and burn it. Release it out of your life. The third ritual that you can do for the dark moon is regarding weight loss. This is an excellent time to do a weight loss spell. So what I particularly like to do and what I've been doing recently to help me, which has really been beneficial, is you can take some water. You know, a lot of people like to make full moon water. Why would you not make dark moon water? So put some water outside and then you can use that for anything that you want to shed. And literally, if you want to shed pounds, you can use it to anoint yourself. You can drink the dark moon water, or you can even make a tea out of it if you want. What I like to do, I love taking ritual baths. So I will take a bath and then put a bunch of herbs and correspondences in there for shedding and weight loss and health and longevity and things like that. And then I will pour my dark moon water into the bath and I will literally bathe in dark moon water. That is probably the simplest weight loss spell that you could ever possibly do. But definitely look into weight loss spells if that's something that you're interested in for the dark moon, because it is a perfect time to shed. The fourth ritual is one of my favorites. This is a great time to make get the fuck out powder. Kind of similar to the idea of hot foot powder. I don't know if you've ever had one of those situations where someone in your life is just really agitating and you really just want them to get out of your life. You don't necessarily want to cause them harm by any means. You just want them to go away. Maybe you have a horrible neighbor that you really want to move, or maybe you have a coworker and you just kind of slightly wish that they would either move to a different department, or maybe they end up getting a great job opportunity at some other company, just somewhere that's not next to your cubicle. GTFO powder is for that. It's to get things moving and to get people away from you. And this powder that you create, you literally just sprinkle it wherever they're going to walk through. So let's say you do have that coworker that you want to get out, you would take a little bit of that GTFO powder and put it maybe underneath their desk, right where their feet would sit. But the powder itself is really harmless. It is usually something that consists of chili powder, chili flakes, salt, and pepper. And then people like to add additional stuff into it if you want to. Like if you want to get real spicy, you can add in some graveyard dirt. You can get as hardcore as you want. But I find that chili powder, chili flakes, salt, and pepper really just kind of does the trick. And it really just gets them out of your life, which is really nice, without any of the negative consequences of them being harmed in the process or anything like that. It's just a nice little relocation spell. The next dark moon ritual that you can do is something that helps either fear, anger, or addiction. And I actually found a version of this. There's a book called Moon Spells by Diane Alfquist. I love that book. I think it's excellent for a beginner getting into moon magic. I think her first book was actually Moon Magic, and then her second one is Moon Spells. So definitely check out Moon Magic first if you are a beginner, and then move to Moon Spells. But anyways, this ritual was in the Moon Spells book, but you essentially take a black candle, and what you would do is you would carve in one initial of something that you want to release, whether it's an addiction, whether it's something you are angry about or fearful of. So let's say you have a massive fear of cats or something. You would carve in a giant C into that candle. You would stare into the flames, allow yourself to do a little energy work here if you want to, but as the candle burns and the wax kind of melts over the top of that initial, whatever you are releasing is being released into the universe back to be recycled into the earth. And there's actually an incantation that you can say during this process from that moon spell book that I really liked. The incantation goes, "The candle burns, so does my fear. To the divine I ask you here. Protect me from this constant dread. This spell is done and all is said." So I thought that was just a really lovely dark moon ritual that I had to share with you. Now the last two rituals, now we're getting into the juicy stuff, in my opinion at least. The next ritual is to do some inner dragon work. And if you are not familiar with this concept of the inner dragon, it's a concept that kind of floats around a lot of different traditions. I was exposed to it when I started down my path with vampiric magic, which I think I will actually make a video about that because it is probably not anything like you think it is. There's a lot of misconceptions about vampiric magic, but there is this concept about the inner dragon, which is similar to your holy guardian angel, although it's not necessarily an angelic being that's separate from yourself. It's more like a path to your most enlightened self. So your inner dragon is you. And when I talk about inner dragon work, I'm not actually talking about dragon magic. There is a whole nother system of magic called dragon magic where you are actually working with external spirits, dragon spirits on the astral plane, and that's not what I'm talking about with this. The concept of the inner dragon is totally separate from like DJ Conway's dragon magic or some left-hand path dragon magic, because I think that's a whole nother tradition. But the inner dragon is really just a way to connect to your higher self. And because the dark moon is a great time for reflection, for contemplation, I find that this is the best time for me personally to work with my inner dragon. And the entire point of doing this is to increase your life force. It's to make you feel powerful and strong, and this is especially helpful for people like myself who sometimes struggle with confidence and struggle to take up space. So if you are one of those people, definitely try getting into working with your inner dragon. Again, it's not like you're working with an external entity. You are literally working with yourself. It's a part of you that's inside that you just need to bring to the surface. So what you would want to do is find a mirror. It can either be a handheld mirror or you can do this in your bathroom. It really doesn't matter. But you do want to be in a quiet space. You want to be in a quiet space where you can dim the lights to where you can just still see your reflection. And at this point, you want to allow your eyes to soften a little bit as you gaze at your reflection and try to let yourself slip into an altered state of consciousness. So this is going to be a lot easier if you already have a regular practice of meditation set up. So use your knowledge of meditation here. I definitely don't have the time to go into that in this video, but allow yourself to go into that altered state of consciousness and you can call forth your dragon. You can either in your head call them forth or speak out loud, and it can be as simple as having a quick conversation. You can say something along the lines of, "I call forth my dragon. I wish to see the truth," and see if anything shows up for you. It's likely that maybe the first couple times you don't really see much, or you're overthinking it, or you're questioning yourself. Allow yourself to do it a couple times to really see if something shows up, and you might start to see an image of your inner dragon come forth, which can be a very, very empowering experience. And the process of working with your inner dragon, I can't really tell you what to do after that point because it's really going to be up to you. This is your world and your journey with your inner dragon, and it's going to be different for everyone. So just experiment with that and see kind of where it goes. The last ritual that I would recommend for a dark moon, and this is actually something you can do either on a full moon or a dark moon. I find that both are excellent for something like this, but create a protection amulet for yourself. I already did a whole video on amulets and talismans, so I'm not going to demonstrate how to do that in this video. I'll just link that video below in the description box, but I personally feel like everyone should have a protection amulet to protect you when you're out about, to protect you wherever, when you're traveling, when you're at home. I don't care. Just get something, get some sort of protective amulet for yourself, and you can even charge it with a specific intent if you want protection from specific types of people, or if you want protection from negative energies. Whatever intention you want to add into that is totally up to you, but take some time to create a protective amulet for yourself. This is going to allow you to set more firm boundaries and really create the reality that you want to live in, create the environment you want to be in. So I hope those 7 rituals were helpful for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I wanted to say thank you again so much to my channel members for picking this topic. This was super fun, and thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.